You believe you are free. It's a foundational belief, isn't it? The bedrock of your entire world. You choose your job. You choose where you live. You receive a paycheck and you decide what to buy with it. You are not a slave. But what if I told you that this freedom is the most sophisticated, most beautifully crafted illusion in human history? What if I told you that the very system you participate in, the 9-to-5 grind, the mortgage, the student loan, the endless cycle of earning and spending, is not a modern invention, but merely the final, perfected version of the oldest and darkest of human institutions? The darkest truths are the ones quietly hidden in plain sight, woven into the fabric of our daily lives. We've been taught a story about progress, a story about humanity evolving from the brutal chains of antiquity to the enlightened liberty of the modern world. That story is a lie. The global economy is not a departure from our ancient past. It is a refinement of it. The chains were never broken. They were just made invisible, melted down and recast as credit scores, interest rates, and quarterly earnings reports. The question is no longer whether you are in bondage. The question is, can you see the bars of your own gilded cage? And if you can, is there a way out? To understand the prison we live in today, you have to go back to the architects. You have to go back to Rome. The Roman Empire. We think of legions, aqueducts, philosophy. But that was the brochure. The engine of Rome, the dark heart that powered its entire civilization, was slavery. Not just as a facet of its economy, but as its entire operating system. The Roman economy wasn't based on innovation or free trade. It was a machine of plunder and consumption. The playbook was simple and brutal. Step 1, conquer a new territory. Step 2, enslave its people. Step 3, ship them back to work on massive agricultural estates called latifundia, owned by a tiny, staggeringly wealthy elite. These slaves, treated as human livestock, produced grain, wine, and olive oil for next to nothing. This flood of cheap goods had a devastating effect. The free Roman farmer, the backbone of the early republic, couldn't compete. They were driven off their land, their livelihoods destroyed. They became a destitute, landless class, flocking to the cities in search of survival. And what did the elites give them? Bread and circuses, free food and spectacular, bloody entertainment to keep them docile and distracted, while the wealth of the world was funneled into the hands of 1% of the population. The illusion was one of unparalleled strength and glory, a global empire, Pax Romana. The reality was a fragile, hollow pyramid scheme. It was a system built entirely on a constant supply of new bodies to fuel the machine. It required perpetual growth, perpetual conquest. And here's where the story takes its first dark turn. When the conquest stopped, when the empire reached its limits and could no longer import new slaves, the system began to eat itself. The machines sputtered, the cheap labor dried up, the vast estates became unproductive. The state, desperate for revenue, crushed the remaining population with taxes. The whole magnificent edifice, built on human fuel, ran out of gas and collapsed into centuries of darkness. The pattern is clear, and it is the foundational pattern for everything that follows. A system where the labor of the many is extracted for the unimaginable profit of the few. A system that presents an illusion of stability and prosperity while being fundamentally unsustainable and hollow at its core. Rome gave the world the blueprint, and the playbook never changes. The fall of Rome didn't end the system, it simply forced it to evolve. The master-slave relationship was too inefficient, too brutal. You had to feed, house, and guard the slaves. You had to constantly put down rebellions. There had to be a better way. Enter feudalism, the new software update. Now, instead of a slave, you have a serf. A serf is not property. They cannot be bought and sold, a crucial PR victory. But the serf is legally tied to the land. They are born on it, they work it their entire lives, and they die on it. They cannot leave. The deal was this. You work the Lord's land, and he gets the vast majority of everything you produce. In exchange, he offers you protection. Protection from other lords, from invaders, from chaos. The illusion was one of divine order and stability, a place for everyone and everyone in their place. God willed it. The reality was a prison without walls. You weren't owned, but your labor was. Your life was not your own. You served the land, which meant you served the Lord who owned it. The physical chains were replaced with chains of obligation, reinforced by church and sword. It was a more stable, more efficient, more psychologically potent system of control. But here is where the story gets darker. For centuries, this system held. But then, a new world was discovered. Vast, empty continents, filled with unimaginable resources. And the elites of the old world had a problem, a familiar problem. They needed labor. They needed bodies to exploit this new paradise. Shipping over millions of serfs wasn't practical, and enslaving the native populations proved brutally difficult. So they devised a new, ingenious trap, a tool that looked like progress, that smelled like freedom. It was called a contract. Indentured servitude. It sounds almost modern, doesn't it? You sign a piece of paper. In exchange for passage to the New World, to Virginia, to the Caribbean, you agree to work for a master for a set number of years. 4, 5, 7 years. After that, you're free. It was slavery with an expiration date, an opt-out clause. But the irony was brutal. The contract was the trap. The terms were predatory. Many died from disease and overwork long before their term was up. If you ran away, your servitude was extended. The system was designed to be inescapable. It was a lie packaged as an opportunity, a life sentence, sold as a temporary inconvenience. What does this mean for you today? Look at the promise of the 20th century corporate job, the company man. You give a corporation 40 years of your life, your loyalty, your best hours of your best days. In return, they give you a steady paycheck, a pension, a gold watch, protection, security. The feudal promise, updated for the industrial age. It feels different, but the core exchange is the same. Your life, your energy, for a cage, a comfortable, gilded cage perhaps, but a cage all the same. The playbook just keeps getting refined. Then came the steam engine, the factory, the industrial revolution, and with it, the greatest rebranding of servitude in history. Suddenly, the land itself wasn't the primary source of wealth. It was capital. It was machines, factories, the means of production. And those machines needed operators. The old feudal system was obsolete. The new elites, the capitalists, the industrialists needed a mobile, flexible workforce. They needed to get the peasants out of the countryside and into the teeming, filthy cities. So they sold them a new story, the story of freedom. You are no longer a serf, bound to the land. You are a free individual. You are free to move, free to choose, free to sell your labor on the open market to the highest bidder. It was a revolution, or so they said. But here's the hidden cruelty of this new freedom. You were free from the land, yes, but you were also free to starve. The common lands were enclosed, the old ways of life destroyed. Your only choice was to sell your time or die. And so the masses poured into the cities, trading the tyranny of the lord for the tyranny of the factory owner. They called it wage labor. We call it having a job. It's a concept we take for granted, but it is a historical invention, and it is the next great innovation in control. Think about it. The factory owner doesn't own you. He doesn't have to house you or feed you or protect you. He simply rents you. He rents your time. He buys 12, 14, 16 hours of your life each day, pays you just enough to survive so you can come back the next day and be rented all over again. You bear all the risks of life, sickness, injury, old age. He bears none. It is the most efficient system of extraction yet devised. And if you thought the company store was just a folk song, think again. In company towns across Britain and America, workers were paid in scrip, a private currency that could only be spent at the company's own stores, where prices were inflated. You lived in a company house. You bought company food with company money. Your wage was an illusion. Your debt to the company was the only real thing. The chain wasn't on your ankle, it was in the ledger book. Do you see the pattern? The tools of control become more abstract, more sophisticated. They move from whips to laws to economic necessity. The new prison is a prison of mathematics. You don't need walls when you have crushing, inescapable poverty. You don't need guards when you have hunger. The illusion was progress and liberty. The reality was the birth of the wage slave, a new class of human being untethered from the land, but now chained to the relentless, soul-crushing rhythm of the machine. Your life was no longer measured in seasons, but in the shrill blast of the factory whistle. And that brings us to today, to the 20th and 21st centuries. The system has had over 100 years to perfect itself, to sand down the rough edges, to make the bars of the cage not just comfortable, but desirable. The final evolution of control was a stroke of psychological genius. The masters of the new system realized you could only push a wage slave so far. Eventually, they get tired, they get angry, they form unions, they demand more. The old model of pure subsistence was inefficient. The question became, how do you get people to not just work, but to want to work, to willingly, even eagerly participate in their own servitude? The answer was brilliant. You don't just sell them survival, you sell them a dream. The American dream. A house in the suburbs, a car in the driveway, a college education for your kids, a life of comfort and consumer splendor. And then you give them the tool to buy that dream right now, before they've earned it. That tool is debt. The mortgage, the auto loan, the student loan, the credit card. These are the invisible chains of the modern world. They are chains we are taught to want, chains we are taught to celebrate. Think about the language. Student debt is an investment in yourself. A mortgage is a rite of passage, the cornerstone of a stable life. Credit card debt is just, normal, a part of modern living. And here is where the story becomes truly insidious. The system has finally achieved what the Roman slave owner and the feudal lord never could. It has made the slave fall in love with his own chains. It has turned the instruments of bondage into status symbols. Your house? You think you own it? Stop making payments for 90 days and find out who really owns it. The bank does. You're not an owner. You're a tenant with a 30-year lease and a lot more paperwork. Your expensive degree? It's a 6-figure chain that tethers you to a career you might hate, just to service the debt you took on to get it. You're not working for your future, you're working to pay for your past. The modern worker is the most efficient slave in history. We don't just work for subsistence anymore, we work to service our debts. The surplus of our labor, the best years of our lives, are funneled upwards, not to a visible lord or a factory owner, but to a vast, faceless, global financial system. A system that owns everything, but is accountable to no one. And they've built the perfect fail-safe. If you somehow manage to resist the allure of debt, if you decide to be prudent and save your money, they have a final, silent weapon to keep you on the treadmill: inflation. The cash in your bank accounts is a melting ice cube. Every single day, the central banks print more of it, diluting its value, making you poorer in slow motion. Saving is punished. Your only option is to run, to work harder, to chase higher returns, to take on more risk, just to stay in the same place. It is the perfect, self-perpetuating machine. Let's review the pattern, the terrifying evolution. The Roman slave was controlled by physical force. The feudal serf was controlled by legal obligation. The industrial wage slave was controlled by economic necessity. The modern debt consumer is controlled by psychological desire and financial abstraction. The system no longer needs whips and chains. They have interest rates and inflation. It is elegant, it is brilliant, and it is everywhere. So, is the global economy just a refinement of ancient slavery? The uncomfortable truth is yes. It's not a conspiracy hatched in a smoke-filled room. It's something far more powerful, an evolutionary system. A system that has, over thousands of years, selected for the most efficient methods of harnessing human energy and directing it toward the top. It has evolved from a brutal, hands-on system of physical domination to a sophisticated, hands-off system of psychological and financial control. It has perfected slavery by making it voluntary. You were born into this system. It did not ask for your consent. Its rules were written long before you were here, and they are not written in your favor. The system does not want you to be free, sovereign, and independent. It wants you to be a predictable, compliant, and indebted producer and consumer. That is your function. This is not a message of despair. It is the opposite. It is a message of empowerment. Because you cannot win a game if you do not know you are playing it, and you have been playing it your entire life. Knowledge is the first step toward liberation. Understanding this history, this pattern, is like seeing the Matrix for the first time. You begin to see the code behind the world. You start to question the narratives you've been fed. You ask, is this debt truly an investment or is it a trap? Is this job my identity or is it just an exchange of my life energy for money? Am I buying assets that build my freedom or liabilities that deepen my servitude? The playbook never changes, but now you've read it. You can see the moves before they happen. You can choose to play a different game. You can reject the consumer dream and pursue actual freedom. You can learn the difference between money and currency. You can build, create, and own things that the system cannot easily take from you. The system is powerful, but it has a weakness. It requires your consent. It requires your participation. It requires you to believe in the illusion. The moment you stop believing, the moment you see the chains for what they are, you can begin to loosen them. The path is not easy, but for the first time, it is visible. The choice, as always, is yours.